Okay, we're going to get started. So welcome back to everyone on the live stream. And I'm pleased to introduce Raphael Zarum, who's the Dean of the London School of Jewish Studies, where he holds the Rabbi Sacks Chair in Modern Jewish Thought. He also serves as the scholar in residence at Central Square Minyan in Hampstead Garden Suburb. He has a PhD in theoretical physics from King's College London, an MA in education from University College London, rabbinic ordination from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks and the Montefiore Kollel, and he's a graduate of the Mandel Leadership School in Jerusalem. His first book, Questioning Belief, Torah and Tradition in an Age of Doubt, was a finalist for the 2023 Rabbi Sacks Book Award, awarded by Yeshiva University. And I should say that that's the reason why Rafi is here in the U.S. this week and next or last or whatever, something like that, to promote his book. And he's actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this in the JCC, but he's speaking about that book on Thursday night across town at that other Jewish institution. And he's also giving a session right after this one on the 7th floor that relates to that book because it's about belief in God. So if you enjoyed that or you're interested in learning more about why you do or don't believe or how you could believe more or less or something to that effect, go to that session on the 7th floor at 4:05. Yeah. Okay. So without further ado, here's Rafi. Oh, there is one more thing, which is I should say that you don't remember this, I don't think, but Rafi and I met 20 years ago at Limud in the UK, and you were giving a session on how to write a Devar Torah in 1 hour, and despite having gone to a Jewish day school, I never learned how to write a Devar Torah until I took Rafi's class, and in 1 hour I actually was able to write one. So, and I've been writing them ever since, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen, and she's amazing for helping with a big team of organising this limud and other limuds, the die-hard limudnik, Karen. And if you want to get something done, ask a busy person, and Karen's a busy person. So thank you for making these things happen and for having me here. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. And yes, I could talk about my book, but I'm going to talk about Rabbi Sacks. On Thursday will be the big lights here. On Thursday will be the 4th yahrzeit since he passed away, and there's many programs and going on in different synagogues and community centers across the US and across the world in his memory. As a pupil of his, I know that what he would want more than anything else is not people to talk about him, but to learn his Torah and to move it forward to be meaningful for them in their way. So that's what I'm going to try and do now. Is there any chance we can change the lights here so I can see people here, or is it all set up for shows? I don't know. To brighten the lights differently? Any chance? Anybody in those rooms? Yes, there are. Fantastic. That's better. Can you still see me? And me as well a bit, but not too much. Oh, okay, that's half. Okay, good. Right, so what I'm going to do now is try and tell you why he was a radical traditionalist, right? Or a traditional radicalist, however you want to look at it. And he wrote many books and had many different ideas, but I want to focus on just key ones that I think might be very useful for you. We'll make sure we finish on time, and then there should be time for questions as well. So here's the key context. What's the reason why people have difficulty with Judaism today? It's because Judaism is difficult, and it demands much of you. Whatever denomination or not you're part of, you could be a better Jew, and there's more to do. And yet, we live in a world of radical individuality. Well, I want to do what I want to do, and I'm much more aware of my needs than ever time in history, and I don't want someone else telling me what to do. So on one hand, we've got autonomy, individualism, separate. I want to live my life how I want to. On the other side, we have the classic word of authority, religious authority, a religion that demands things of you. How do you square the two together? And that's what a lot of young people have difficulty with, right? They feel they want to live their life in their way, their understanding, and yet there's this ancient religion that's making demands upon them. How do you square authority and autonomy? By the end, we will have an answer of how Rabbi Sacks very interestingly solves that issue. But to frame it, I want to tell you a little bit about the way he wrote. He wrote not just about Jewish ideas, but about society in general. British society, but also modern society. And he pointed out that we have forgotten an important sector. There's extra handouts you should be able to get hold of. Good. We've forgotten about an important third sector in our society. You've got a quote over here from the beginning, which is from him. Right? The voluntary sector, this is the third sector of our society he talks about, differs from the state and the market, he says. The state is about the production and distribution of power, politics, control. The market is about the production and distribution of wealth, buying things. But there are other goods, among them love, friendship, trust, which are different. Communities, neighborhood groups, and voluntary organizations are vital to the health of society. What Rabbi Sacks would always say is, you're not just a voter, and you're not just a consumer. You're also a person. And yet most of the time, you're treated as a voter. If you're American, you've been treated as a voter for the last 4 years. Right? And if you just walk down any street, then all the shops are treating you as a consumer and saying, come in and buy, and you need this, and your life will be better if you have this thing right now. And that majority, and it's financial, and it takes over most of our lives, right? The political authority and economics. And why Sacks says we've forgotten there's a third kind, which we as Jews understand, but society doesn't actually promote. It's not even taught in schools, which is community, care, how we treat each other, not for something else, but just as human beings. And he points out just a lovely point that makes it really clear. You all know that economics, this unbridled capitalism idea, which America is the pinnacle of, the fundamental philosophical thinking behind that is Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. You heard of that? That's the key book that he talks about, right? That this hidden hand that will allow, by competition, to be the best way society works. But he points out, Adam Smith published that in 1776. Well, people forget that 15 years earlier, in 1759, Adam Smith published a different book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, the ethical underpinnings of society, the need for empathy that we have to have with each other, and the danger of the corruption of moral sentiments and unbridled power. So everyone very neatly just quotes that bit of Smith and says, oh, for capitalism, we can't have any controls about society and care. But Smith lived in a religious Christian culture context. He couldn't have imagined it being like it is today. And so modernity has selected certain philosophical parts from the past and missed out others. It's a huge mistake our society has made. As Jews, or the Jewish people, stand for community in very fundamental ways, as other religions and faith do. But it's being forgotten and it's waning. And that's a challenge in society. So Rabbi Sacks saw his challenge as a modern rabbi is to preach these values in a modern world. Now, he was a brilliant teacher. He was the head of the London School of Jewish Studies for many years. And when he became the chief rabbi, he became the president, and I became the head of the college. And I got to meet him every 6 weeks for about 10 years to talk about leadership and ideas. And I learned a lot from that man. Very special human being, not magical, not one of these prophet angels, a very down-to-earth human being that you can learn from. And so I want to share with you now some of his Torah about this issue within the context of the third sector that we need to understand and care for society. How do we solve the problem of the contradiction between authority and autonomy, or individualism and the commandedness of religion? How can you square those two? So we're going to do that by looking at key ideas. By the way, this little photo of him is when he was at our graduation. When you were at our college, we were handing out degrees, and you get the gown of the highest qualification you have. But he had a lot of those, so he had a multicolored gown, which was beautiful to watch, and he loved. It was quite fun. So I thought a nice photo having him in that. So we're going to talk about 3 issues, and it's going to relate to the Seder that we just read. And if I'm going too fast because of my accent or just the speed, because I'm living on different time at the moment, then just say slow down. Or what? This is New York. Shall I speed up?
Yeah, you're fine.
Excellent. Yes, that was pointed out. I davened here a few years ago. 2 years ago, my father passed away, and I was davening every day saying Kaddish. And I went to one of these. It was obviously an old shul that had been taken over by an Orthodox community, but it was very, very large. But it was a weekday service, right? So it's like a huge place. right? And there's like 50 of us near there, and I start leading the service, and guys kept looking up to me and going, faster, faster. And then on the Thursday, when you read from the Torah, right, you have to go to the Ark, which is way over there. So I'm about to go, and the guy leans over and he goes, run, run. And running back with the Torah. But no one talked. They went every day. It's a different kind of davening than Shabbat where you take your time, but it's a very interesting thing. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Okay, source one, accepting responsibility. If you had to summarize Rabbi Sacks' approach in one word, I would say nuanced. If I had to explain his philosophy in one word, which I can't because it's more than that, can I sum up you in one word? No, so why him? But if I had to sum up his philosophy in one word, I'd say responsibility. We have to explain what we mean by that. So he's got a book about that. If you look on the back side of the handout, that's the book I'm using for today, To Heal a Fractured World. People ask you, well, you know, what's your favorite book of Rabbi Sacks? Like saying, what's your favorite child? But this is an important one. So we're going to do some ideas from there. So in accepting responsibility, he talks about the beginning of Isaiah, chapter 1 of Isaiah, which is actually read for the Haftarah of Deuteronomy, of Devarim, normally in the summer months. And Isaiah, as we know, is living at the time of the first temple, and there's a challenge of immorality within society, and Isaiah is upset with the people and for not listening to the word of God, and points out that God doesn't want your sacrifices in the temple. Not because sacrifices shouldn't be done, but there's no point doing them unless you've got a real intention to do them meaningfully. And if you don't, then what's the point? You can see over here, look what he says, I delight not, in verse 11. He says, you know, I'm fed up with your burnt offerings and fat-fed offerings. I delight not in the blood of bulls or lambs or male goats. I don't want any of that because you don't do it seriously. So when you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Yedchem damim mal'u. You're acting immorally, and yet you come and make offerings. The offerings are supposed to reflect your attitude towards God. And if you don't have a good attitude, then what's the point? Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean, put away the evil of your doings from before your eyes, cease to do evil. Chidlu hara'ah, stop acting immorally. And then we get a positive of what you should do. What you should do. And what does it say here? Limdu heitev, learn to do good. Dishu mishpat, seek justice. Ashu chamot, shiftu yatom, rivu almana. Aid the oppressed, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. In one line, Rabbi Sacks says that's the responsibility at the heart of Jewish thought. By the way, it's interesting, he has 5 aspects in verse 17, which parallels the 5 kinds of beasts that Isaiah says God doesn't care about you offering in verse 11. There's always structures that work in the way the Torah is put together. So to summarize that idea, look at the paragraph underneath from his book. Rabbi Sacks says the following: it is impossible to be moved by the prophets and not to have a social conscience. Their message delivered in the name of God is accept responsibility. The world will not get better of its own accord. Nor will we make it a more human place by leaving it to others to do so. Politicians, in brackets, certainly not, as we know. Columnists, protesters, campaigners, making them agents to bring redemption on our behalf. The Bible is God's call to human responsibility. The Bible is God's call to human responsibility. It's calling us to act. Now, that's a general statement for all of society, but to make it as particular as possible is in source 2 about Abraham. When God calls Abraham, as we know famously 2 portions ago, we read in Shul, go for yourself, lech lecha. What does he say to him to do? He said, leave your family home. And in verse 2, this is source 2, I'll make you a great nation, I'll bless you, make your name great, and you shall be a blessing, very famously. How do you become a blessing? We're going to talk about that in a minute. And I'll bless those who bless you, and blessed through you will all the families of the earth be. Again, the word bracha, blessing, repeated 5 times as a key theme. Now that's this idea of becoming a blessing, Rabbi Sacks then analyzes by looking at a particular legal scenario. Now, you all know that children in cheders or elementary schools are taught to say blessings, right? It's important to say blessings and the brachot you learn as children. Okay, I mentioned actually when I taught this last time, it came to me about Kinky Friedman passed away Remember Kinky Fedian, the comedian, passed away less than a year ago now, right? I can't do his accent. But I did hear him in London, right? And he once said, wash your hands. And he said, my mum taught me, wash your hands and say your prayers, because Jesus and germs is everywhere. That's kinky, right? So, we miss him. We miss him very much. He actually spoke once at Cage, and I can't tell you what he said because it is so shocking and amazing. But if you ask me afterwards, I'll tell you. It's very, very funny. Anyway, Cage was the Limud equivalent in America many, many, many moons ago. Anyway, Rav Sacks talks about blessings, brachot. And there's a blessing for everything, right? You want to eat fruit, right? Or you want to do a particular mitzvah. Then you say a bracha. You go in a sukkah, you shake a lulav, you make a blessing. You learn the blessing, how to say it, lighting Shabbat candles, making kiddush. It's the whole thing. But we don't make blessings on everything. Look at the next source at the bottom of the page from Maimonides, the laws of blessings. There are positive commands. There's positives and negatives, do's and don'ts. There's positive commands, and a person is obligated to make an effort to pursue after them. Right? By the way, in general, we do blessings on positive commands, not on negatives. Right? There's no blessing for do not kill. Right? You're really annoyed with someone, and you go, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to make a bracha. Right? You don't do that. I could have done that. You see someone very attractive who's not your partner, and you say, I'm not going to do anything, but I'd like to make a blessing, if as a compliment. It could be an opening chat hub line. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, you don't make blessings on negative commandments, but on positive commandments, right? Keeping Shabbat, making kiddush, lighting Shabbat candles. So he says you've got to make an effort to do them. For instance, putting on tefillin in the weekday, going to a sukkah, shaking lulav, blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah, or hearing the shofar. More to the point, you don't have to blow it; you have to hear the shofar. Right? And he says these are referred to as obligations and you're required to do them. But look what he then says. V'chol mitzvot aseh, and all these positive commandments, shebein adam lemakom, which are between you and God, mvarech aleha kodem, you make a bracha before. You make blessings on positive commandments that are between you and God. God commands you to keep Shabbat and to sit in a sukkah, you do those. So what don't you make a blessing? What kind of positive commandments do you not make a blessing on then? Work out? Right? When they're not between you and God, but when they're between you and someone else. We categorize the commands in two ways. Right? Between you and God and between you and other people. What do they have in common? Between you and, right? Relationship. They're all relational, but they're different. So you don't make a blessing on a positive command about helping someone. Look at the table underneath. I made it nice and clear for you. So on the left, as we said, between you and God, saying the Shema or the Amida, you make a bracha for those things, on Yom Kippur, mezuzah, Shabbat, candles, kosher, eating food, all those blessings. But you don't make a blessing when you give tzedakah. Can you imagine there could be one? Great one, right? Leten tzedakah, and you put the money in, or you press enter on the button when you give your donation, right? Or visiting people in hospital, right? And so on. So don't turn over the sheet, right? There are many theories about why you don't make a blessing on mitzvot, commandments between you and someone else. What do you think? If you read the second page, I don't want to hear, because then you're reading them, but from your own thought, logically, why might it be the case? There's 4 or 5 different answers by the rabbis, and Rabbi Sacks has a different one. But why do you think you wouldn't make a blessing before giving tzedakah or visiting someone in the hospital? What do we think? My friend.
Well, it might make it a little bit about yourself. So you're visiting the sick and you say, it could have the lens of sort of narcissistic, aren't I wonderful?
Right, it's narcissistic, it's about me, it's about aren't I great for visiting you. Okay? So, I'm really glad you're ill because I can do a mitzvah. Yeah? Please be more ill and I can do a bigger mitzvah. Right? Well, good, yes, there's an aspect to absolutely. I want to keep developing that.
Well, similarly, the person that's on the receiving end would like to believe you're doing this to be nice.
Right.
Or that you're visiting them because you enjoy their company.
Right, not because they're a mitzvah. Right, so exactly, it's about them, not about you. Right?
And that you're doing it because
exactly, so you walk in and they're half asleep and you think, I'll just get the bracha in before they wake up. And halfway they wake up, right, like, exactly, there's something a bit not nice about it. Good, what else? Let's keep going. Think of other aspects as well, yeah?
Perhaps it relates to the idea of a commandment.
Go on.
and that the commandment, sometimes you might think of a command as a requirement or
Right.
an obligation, but in this sense, you are actually welcoming the command.
Right, so, you're welcoming, right, it's an obligation you don't necessarily want to do, but this you're so I didn't choose to get up and shake a lulav today, because it's Sukkot, and I'm commanded I've got to do it. But I would want to visit the person even if it wasn't a mitzvah. Really. It's the kind of thing, okay. Can you see how we're overlapping now with authority and autonomy here? Can we see what's coming here? Other possibilities? Get really rabbinic. Get your rabbinic hats on. Technical things.
The difference between a capital M mitzvah that's in the list of the 613 and
Right.
a mitzvah, which is, oh, he's such a mitzvah. I gave that woman my seat on the bus.
Okay, but that is a mitzvah.
Are the ones,
But that is a mitzvah still, because that's Kiddush Hashem. It still counts as a mitzvah. There's no bracha, but
no, are the ones we're talking about, visiting the sick, giving charity, are they in the 600?
yes. But often they're subcategories. So they're often a sub of Kiddush Hashem, right, or Ben Machava. But they are part of that. They're subsections. They are included. I want some real technical answers as well. So let's go right to the very back.
Well, we always say the bracha before we do the thing.
Yes.
And we don't know if it's going to be successful, what we're about to do.
That's interesting, right? You say the bracha and you light the candles, right? Well, actually, okay, yes, you cover your eyes, yeah. But you make the bracha and then you drink the wine. And you're saying, so why might not you be successful?
Well, let's say you go to visit the sick.
Yeah.
You end up insulting them and doing something wrong.
Right.
Not really the mitzvah.
Yeah. Well, you could make bracha on the kiddush and then spill the wine. Yeah. That's true. But you're on the right track on those kind of things, absolutely. Right? I'm going to tell you, shall I tell you this off-color joke?
Yes.
Right? It's very off-color, but we only do it because we, as Jews, we can laugh at ourselves. It's important. So, once you made the bracha, say you're washing your hands, you're not supposed to talk, right? Until you have the bread. You're all very careful about this. So there's a story of a very religious Jew, Litvak Jew, who was, very, very stickler on all his laws. And then his village was attacked by the Cossacks. And they're killing everybody. And this Cossack's about to kill him. He goes, "Don't kill me yet. There's a blessing I need to make." Right? There's a bracha that people did. There's a terrible story in the camps. They would do it. Mital Kiddush Hashem, to die in the sanctification of God's name. I'm going to tell a joke, I know, but at the same time being very serious. It's a very amazing bracha. There was a debate even in the camps of how to pronounce the words, which way of doing it. So this very religious Jew makes this bracha, Lahamit al Kiddush Hashem. And the Cossacks looking at him, and suddenly something else happens, and the Cossack bounds off something else, and the Jew goes, That's a horrible joke, right? And you might think it's inappropriate, and it might be, but also if you're laughing, that's why we're here, because we can laugh, right? And I was in Israel in July with the Israeli soldiers, and they were telling much worse jokes, right? Sometimes that's how you survive. Anyway, I'm telling you that about in terms of blessings that you make before, as you were mentioning as well. And if I expand what you're saying as well is, when I make Kiddush, I have to drink a bit, and I'm done. How much do I drink? Or on Pesach, how much matzah are you supposed to eat? The rabbi said there's a certain amount of matzah you have to eat within a certain amount of time. The rabbis like defining things to fulfill the law, right? To shake a lulav and etrog, right? How big is the lulav? How big is the etrog? How much does it smell? Imagine that with visiting the sick, right? So you walk in to visit someone, you call the doctor and they go, how sick are they? I'm not, because it doesn't count unless they're like, is it really bad or just a bit? Because otherwise it's not a. Do you can imagine? It's like, how do you make the blessing? What else? This is not stand up. This is halacha. Okay. Sometimes they overlap. So yes.
So in light of that, it's also the same for charity.
Right.
It needs specificity.
Yes.
Then we don't know how much.
Yeah, it's interesting because charity, there is an amount you're supposed to give, 20%, but you might not give it all in one go. And you give it different places. Do I make a bracha every time when I give charity? Do I have the blessing at that moment? Right? So again, it's another problem. Other possibility, other reasons. Yes, over there, you're going to now come here. Yeah? Yeah.
We live in a human world, right? It's our job that God has to be in this world, and we do mitzvahs. So it seems to me there's an impracticality of making a bracha in every interaction.
You mean technically difficult? We could do a bracha in the morning once for the whole day of it. No?
You can't. For things between men and men.
Right, because you're interacting the whole time, it'd be difficult. Is that what you're saying?
In
Yeah.
Nebraska, when you go for a jog, you look at everybody and say good morning.
Oh, right. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Whereas here in Europe, when you go for a jog, you don't. In this world,
There's so many people. Okay, no, I can see that. I can see that. Some things I like making blessings over again. The blessing you say when you come out the toilet. Seriously, I want to write a book about it. Jews on News. Seriously. Yeah. Secretions and sanctity. Defecation and the divine. No, I'm very serious. It's my favourite blessing. When my grandmother was ill and I'd helped her go to the toilet and I saw how hard it was. Right? Look it up. Learn it by heart, because that's the most best blessing you can say. Right? When you come out the toilet, a blessing that your body should work. I dare anyone not to say it and not mean what they're saying. Right? I learned that, so I say that many times a day. But yes, it wouldn't be practical on each person. Hi, Baruch, 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 Baruch. It wouldn't work. Okay. Other thing next to you, sir? Yes, sir? Yeah? No, behind. Yeah, go on.
This kind of restates the categorization itself, but there are mitzvot that involve your relationship with God, and there are mitzvot that involve your relationship to your fellow human being. And the mitzvot, the expression of God itself, is between you and God. So it's the mitzvah that you do for your
Right, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, O God. You're talking to God. Okay.
But if you're doing a mitzvah, which, with respect
Yeah, but I wouldn't visit the sick as much if I wasn't told to do it as a mitzvah. You might, sir, but I wouldn't. I'm not such a good person. I'm not being cute. I'm being serious. But yes, it's ones that I should have worked out myself as human, but I'm only doing because God told me, so I still should appreciate God, no? Maybe, but I see what you're saying, which is that there's a human aspect to it. Yeah. Other things, are we done?
I was just gonna say,
And there's one over here as well. Yeah, I'll do it. Go on.
no, I think it's stopping you from actually doing what you should do. Like, it's like, I think a mitzvah between you and another person, it's like you should not have any reason to sort of pause and
Just go straight in.
just go through.
But you're saying it gets in the way. Maybe even. Yeah, okay.
I have two thoughts. One is that we have responsibility for each other, and so it's like we're acting this way as a community.
Mhm.
And like even when you make a minyan, you don't say a bracha just that you made the minyan.
Right.
To, like go on.
Yes.
The fact that you're joining with other people to do something is not something you.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And the other thought I had was intentionality.
Mm.
That when you're saying
We have a Sacksian philosopher here. Yes, go on.
You're going to eat something, that you're going to do something, you're expressing your intent. But I feel like a mitzvah between people, it's not only valid if you intend to do it. Like if you include someone in a party, if you do something special for someone, if you get up and give them a seat, like you may not think you're doing something.
But you are.
but it
Okay.
results
It's
in
very
a
interesting.
The people on the live stream can't hear the audience's question.
Oh, I'm really sorry for everyone on the live stream. We finished that. I'll summarise now. But sorry about that. But there was lots of different points that were made. And we'll do one more, but I'll repeat it as well. Go on.
We know that God wants us to do something because He's given us the obligation. But with people, you can't know whether they want to be visited or not.
So there's another good point as well. Some might not want to be visited. So the bracha, if I shake a lulav, God's going to go, I don't want that lulav. You know, God wants it. But you visit someone, they might not want you, right? So if you fill the mitzvah, if they don't want you to come in, and you say, how dare you not let me in? It's my mitzvah. You can't do that. And then you made a very good point about intention as well. You might not be intending to help them, but you help them anyway. Right? We had the aspect of it's really about humanity, not about God, so I make the blessing. Many aspects of it. You've covered a lot of the areas, right? Turn over and you'll see. I'll give you now the sources that talk about this. Rabbi Sacks summarizes in his book. In the 13th century, the Rashba argued, right? It's not fully in your power to do it on your own. You know, when you make a bracha, you do it yourself. Two people should not make kiddush together. One makes the other answers amen. But you might not be able to help that person. That person was poor and needed help and support. And you went in with a group of people, 10 of you, to give support financially to do it. If you give to a JCC we're in a JCC. If you give to Limud or something, you'll help someone else. Is it your mitzvah or the collective? Who makes the bracha? So on a technical level, it's difficult. That's one approach he gives. The Abu Dhram says, you want to make blessings on nice things, not on sad things. It's an interesting approach, by the way. It's not nice. And we want to have Hebrew words on really sad occasions. Blessed are you, O God, for this ill person. It's like it's God is up and happy and positive, or it's a blessing. This is not a blessing. Maybe it's just inappropriate to do it. Third approach. not limited to Jewish people, Levi Epstein says, right? In other words, a non-Jewish person is not obliged to keep the Sabbath. They're just not, they can if they want, but they're not obliged to keep the Sabbath. But we're all obliged to give charity and to do these things. So why make a blessing? Oh, I'm so special, I'm a Jew, I do these things. Everybody should do these things. And Rabbi Sacks had something that relates to what you were saying about intention. Okay? And this is the one he gets into big time, which is his development idea. And he says that the reason why you don't need to make a blessing is, like, the reason you're shaking a lulav is because God said. Now, let's say you shake a lulav not because you like lulavs, but because you like Star Wars and you think they look like lightsabers and it's fun shaking them around. Okay? Or you like playing with a shofar. You could have this teenage boy, right, or girl, loves playing with shofar, doesn't really care about it, and picks up and starts blowing Rosh Hashanah. Have you fulfilled your obligation if you do the act but don't have the intention? It's a debate, but it definitely doesn't feel right. The whole point of doing these actions is because God commanded it to have a feeling and make sense. Right, and it can come to their reasons. But when it comes to visiting the sick, right, does intention matter? Or does what matter that you did it? That you did it. Who's better? You walk past the person in the street who asks you for money, and you give them just, a couple of dollars, and you feel bad afterwards. I should have given them more. I didn't really care about them. And you get all upset about it, and you make you think about it. And some other rich business person comes out of a building and just chucks $100 bill on them and walks off. Who did the better mitzvah? If it's about intention and feeling and care, the first one. If it's about they needed money, then it's the second one. So look at what Rabbi Sacks quotes to make his point. This famous Gemara, there's a Gemara in Pesachim. He says, someone who gives money to a hospital, and they say, I'm giving the money to the hospital because they're looking after my child. So I'll give you a bit more than you need, but I'm giving it, right, mainly because you looked after my child. Not because I care about any other children, but you looked after my child. Or a person says, I'm going to give charity. Why? Sheyeh ben Arba. I want to get to the world to come. I want to live forever. I want to be with the angels, with God. Right? And I know my reward, if I give lots of charity, I'll get to go to heaven. Is that good? Not great. Look what the Talmud says Rabbi Sacks. Harei zeh tzadik gamor. They are completely righteous. Someone does tzedakah for the wrong reasons, right? Because for personal benefit for themselves, or to get to the world to come, or whatever it is, they're perfectly. What do you mean they're perfectly righteous? They didn't care about the kids in the hospital. They just wanted to get to the world to come. But it doesn't matter, because when it comes to you and other people, you gave them money. I don't care why. You did it, and that's more important than not doing it. Intention is secondary. Almost irrelevant. It's the action that you did. To quote Rabbi Sacks, an act between us and another human being, however, has a different character. What matters is not the act, but its result. What matters in acts of tzedakah, charity, or chesed, kindness, is that we help the needy, alleviate the poor, alleviate the poverty of the poor, ease the distress of the bereaved. The point of the command is its effect on the world, on the other person. Motives are irrelevant to acts, the purpose of which is to bring aid to those who are in need. You getting it? It's a totally different way of looking at it. It's a very good point he makes. A command between us and other people needs no blessing because it requires no special intent. Someone was in need, we gave. Someone was ill, we visited. Someone was lonely, we invited them home. The religious character of the moment lay not in the motive for which it was performed, but the comfort given, the help received, the loneliness lifted. Far from needing a blessing, the act itself is a blessing. And as Shira was saying, you might have unintentionally helped someone, included them in a party. That's a blessing. You don't need a blessing. Like you're saying you can't make a bracha about that because you weren't intentionally doing it. But intent doesn't matter. It doesn't need a blessing, and it counts. You see? It's an incredible point about the difference between those two things. Now, in the progressive world, well, I mean the non-Orthodox, it's very rude to say non-Orthodox because like most people aren't Orthodox. I've always wondered when we talk about non-Jews. Right? It's a very weird thing because like most of the planet are not Jewish, so to call them non-Jews is a bit weird. More accurate would be we are all non-ants. That's more accurate. There's a lot more ants than human beings on the planet. So you're much more of a non-ant than anything. Sorry, it's my scientific background. Anyway, the point I'm making is, in the progressive world, tikkun olam was a huge issue in society, and it's a challenge. Is do people care about social responsibility anyway because they're Jewish? And it's a big debate that happens sometimes about that, right? And the Orthodox world is kind of nervous about it. But by Sacks solves this by saying it's also a mitzvah. It just doesn't have a blessing because it's innately good. Yes, it's innately good. Absolutely, but it's still commanded by God. The two go together, and sometimes that gets forgotten. Yeah.
Isn't there sort of a background therapeutic behaviorism in this? The rabbis believing that if you do the action, forget the intent, you do the action enough, you continue to do it, goodness will follow. The intention will actually follow.
Yes. Because well, intention might grow, but the act at the moment, that's a separate issue. But a blessing isn't about for the future; it's got to be about now. Right? So what you're saying is, in general, mitzvah goreret and mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another in other ways, by the way. If you pray a bit, you end up praying a bit more. Right? So that's the case with all mitzvot, actually. I know you think it might happen much more with the socially aware ones, but actually, people like ritual. Right? Sometimes the more relevant, the better. And they'll do more of it, actually. So I think that the psychology of doing some ritual leads to more occurs to mitzvot between us and humans and us and God, equally, I'd say, but we could discuss more afterwards. But anyway, the point he's making here, right, is that when the Torah says to be a blessing, this is what it's about. There are certain kinds of commandments from God, which because they're innately of value, it doesn't matter your motive. It's a very interesting thing, and the proof he gives it from the Talmud. We don't care why, whereas other mitzvot with kiddush, right? I don't do it just because I like manischewitz. See, I know what you drink, right? Or we do good wine. My wife was like, Rafi, why do you always get kedem? Get good wine. It's kiddush for God. Like, make it nice. Like, we've educated our children to enjoy good wine. My daughter's in university. You know, people always worry in university that people drink too much, but we're the reverse. You know, you can send a kosher bar can wine on Amazon, so our daughter gets it every week. Hint, hint, make kiddush. Right? Her friends think we're fantastic. A bit weird, but fantastic. But the point I'm making in here, yes, is that being a blessing is innate in itself. Becoming a blessing, and that's part of our human responsibility. Now, we're short on time. I don't want to read the whole. You can read it in your own time. This section 3 a little bit, but he talks about that the difference between being commanded and being called by God is that commands are general things, where callings are particular. We feel connected to something, and even though philosophically, according to Kant, we've got to have this ideal moral law that we all follow. That's true, but there's a different kind of law that's more personal, that when someone asks something of you and you act, that is a key. That's what he talks about here. He talks about the moral life is not just about the universals of law, but the particulars. And you can read it in the column here. Look at the second column, though. We'll just do the last paragraph. There is no life without a task, no person without a talent, no place without a fragment of God's light waiting to be discovered and redeemed, no situation without the possibility of sanctification, no moment without its call. It may take a lifetime to learn how to find these things, but once we learn, we realize in retrospect that all it ever took was to listen. And I'm just going to suggest that what Rabbi Sacks is doing here is showing you the solution to the autonomy versus authority debate. Right? The modern young individual wants to live their life as they want, and Torah and Judaism and the rabbi says you're supposed to live it like this. And Rabbi Sacks says to the young person, well, how do you want to live? Well, what do you want to do with your life? What's important to you? Right? More than any other modern Orthodox rabbi I've seen, the last chapters of this book are all about you. He really understood the zeitgeist, the language of, you want to live a meaningful life, fine, how are you going to do it? Right? These are the value systems. What do you want to care about? And gradually, the more you think about it, you want to do something meaningful, of value to yourself and to others. And the Torah enables you to do that. It gives you the opportunity to do that. And so, if you look at the quote here, we'll come back to the Hineni, but look at the second bullet point on the bottom, because I want to give some time for questions. We finished 3:45, yeah. So, lesson. You never really have, look, actually the third bullet point, where what you want to do meets what needs to be done, that is where God wants you to be. right? If you really think about how you do want to live your lives, instead of having an argument, authority versus autonomy, say you've got autonomy for what? What are you going to do with your life? What's of value of an importance? And very soon, and I talk to many young people, they start saying things which are mitzvot. And I say, well, Judaism thinks you do that as well. And there becomes an overlap, and then it becomes meaningful. The great way of summarizing this is being up for God's call. Famously, when God calls you, you should answer, Hineni, here I am. And Rabbi Sacks writes about that in that last paragraph. But I noticed something, which I never got to discuss with him, but actually it relates to the seder we just had just now, with the story of the Akedah, the near sacrifice of Isaac. And you know how it begins? God calls to Abraham and he says, Hineni, here I am, willing to do what you said, God. And God says, I want you to take up your son. It's a terrible thing. But that's not the only Hineni in the story. There's a second one. When he's walking with his son, and his son looks at his dad with the big knife and the wood, right? And he says, Dad, and Abraham says, Hineni bani, here I am, my son. And the son says, where's the animal? Goes, God will show us. But now Abraham has said Hineni twice. What does Hineni mean? I'm here, ready to listen to you fully and do what's needed for you. He's now said it to God and to his son. And the son is the one that he loves, is what he cares about, his personal life. But God is the one that he's discovered and also believes in, who tells him what to do. One is authority, and one is autonomy as a father to care about his son. Now, how are you going to be able to keep your children happy and God happy at the same time? He's done two Hinenis. And that seems to be the contradiction we've been talking about in the class. But guess what? In the story, there's a third Hineni. When he's about to kill him, and he lifts up the knife, there's a debate whether he wanted to do it or not, and the angel says, don't, Avraham, stop, and he calls him Avraham, and Avraham shouts out, Hineni, here I am, and the angel says, you don't need to kill him, find something else, and then he finds the ram in the thicket. And if you look, the word Hineni occurs 3 times, but also seeing occurs 3 times. Because first, he sees what God tells him to do, and then there's a seeing of this object. And then when the third time he shouts at Avraham and he says, Hineni, he looks up and he sees the ram. So for me, my suggestion of the lesson is the following in that second bullet point. You never really have to choose between yourself and God. Taking responsibility solves this dilemma. It encourages you to way to find both. And I don't know about you, but many times when you've got a question about your Jewish life, it's about this clash. There's things that you or your family want or need to do, and there's demands of Judaism, of the rabbi or community or something. And there's a clash between the two. And the good rabbi, if you go and see a good rabbi, will say, let's see if we can find a way through this. Let's look for the third Hineni. Right? At the moment, all you can see now is a knife and so on. But if you look up, there's an animal in the thicket. Maybe we can sacrifice that instead, or we can solve the problem. The third Hineni of the story is the resolution of it. You see what I'm saying? That's the idea of it. And Rabbi Sacks' argument is, he said, I don't really think this idea of individualism is fundamentally against Judaism. Not really. He's lean in to that individuality. What does it mean to be a self? Right? Let's look at the different theories in Greek philosophy and other ones of what it means to be a human being and what your purpose is on the earth. And once you get excited about that, you give someone the Torah, they get all excited. Oh, I've got some of those laws here. There's amazing construction. So instead of getting upset with people having their own opinions, lean in and challenge them. What does that mean? How are you going to live it? What are you going to do? And then the two begin to overlap. Rabbi Sacks didn't want people just to read his books and go, wow, what a clever man. He wanted what Franz Rosenzweig 100 years ago wanted about books. Look at the second last point. I do not at all wish to be read. My sole purpose is to act and to inspire activity. If reading his book helps you think about your life and act in a different way, that's the value of it. The value of a class is not what you clap at the end. But what matters is what you remember when you go out the room, or what you learn from this. And the 3 things I was trying to impart from Rabbi Sacks' ideas are, number 1, accept responsibility. Accept it. That's what we're here. We have ability to respond to the world, accept responsibility. Number 2, become a blessing. And becoming a blessing means the innate value of these things that we need to do, to be a blessing for the world. And finally, find out what you can do. What are your particular abilities or resources or contexts that can help make a difference and overlap and therefore change the world? That's the kind of, you see why I called it radical traditionalism? It's radical because it accepts autonomy and individualism as valuable, and it's traditional because it says, yeah, and you still got to be commanded. So it's not the progressive approach, and it's not the fundamentalist approach. It's something in between. That's why he was so interesting. Now, I've tried to summarize a good 200 pages in 40 minutes, right? So it's not clear, partly because of that, and also because I'm not perfect at doing this, okay? But that's the point I wanted to share with you. We have a couple of minutes for questions and comments, and then we'll wrap up. So, if there are questions, there's a microphone so that people on the screen, apologies, can hear as well. Anybody? Comments or questions? Yes, over here.
Wait.
There's a microphone coming behind you, sir.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. I don't remember the name of the singer who does Jewish songs from Canada and Montreal. Leonard Cohen, right. Thank you very much.
I heard that one also with Rabbi Sacks.
Yeah, he did a great video about him when he passed away. Yes, absolutely.
Right, exactly. So I was going to ask, how that might relate to what you were talking about.
Well, first of all, in my next session, I'm going to quote a poem, not a song by Leonard Cohen, not one Rabbi Sacks does, but I heard Leonard Cohen in concert once. It was a very religious experience. But Leonard Cohen, as you know, famously, dabbled with Buddhism and got engaged in the essence of a thing. And so there definitely is an overlap. I mean, I once had a conversation, an interfaith conversation with a Buddhist, actually a Jew who'd become a Buddhist. And I was trying, and he was explaining to me, he says, for us, it's all about intention. He says, when I pick up a glass of water, I think about what the water is and where it came from before I drink it. And I said, yeah, we have the same thing, we make a bracha. Right? I said, but the problem is we say the bracha without thinking, so the intention doesn't work. Okay? And we're just comparing the different approaches. And this relates, I think, to the Rabbi Sacks thought about Leonard Cohen and those issues. But they're very different structures. Buddhism is very pure in its, there's a reality in the world and you have to react to it. Whereas Judaism has a whole framework. The way I explained to him, I said, a way of describing Judaism today, and this is the problem with our big synagogues or denominations, is that Judaism, right, is like a pub without any beer, right? We've got these wonderful buildings, these wonderful these wonderful smells, but often the real value desire inside it has been lost. There's not enough beer available. They're all in the pub. Whereas Buddhism was always a pub with always beer without the pub. Never had that around it. So there's a kind of innateness of the way Leonard Cohen talked, a purity, which was very valuable. But Rabbi Sacks would argue, an individual can become great and have perfect motivation and intention of themselves. But to create a society that do it needs commandedness. To encourage people to do it and gradually understand that it can become innate for themselves. Or as the lady over there said, from the wrong reasons, bitoch shelo shma balishma, to come from the intentional reasons. So there are individual great Dalai Lama, Leonard Cohen who've done these amazing things. But to create a society that does it, which is more powerful, right, you need commandedness. And that's why making blessings makes the difference. Other comments or questions? We are good, because we're running out of time. Good. So let me summarize. Thank you. Let me summarize. He wrote many books on different subjects. You can, a great introductory book is A Letter in the Scroll for Rabbi Sacks about why be a Jew. They've actually taken one of those chapters, translated into Hebrew, made a little booklet and sent it to every Israeli soldier fighting at the moment today, right, to remind them why they're doing it. It's very serious, but it's not a bad thing. I don't know if you've seen the play Rostand, what's it called? Cyrano de Bergerac. There's an amazing scene where the soldiers are fighting and they haven't got enough food and they're all sad and they're not ready to fight. And Cyrano turns up and he starts talking to them about Gascogne, the place they're from, and what a beautiful place it is and how amazing the plants and the trees are there. And afterwards, the general says, "What have you done? You've made them more depressed." He goes, "No, I haven't. I've reminded them why they're fighting, what they're fighting for." And this booklet does that for them. So it's a wonderful book to read if you want, which is called A Letter in the Scroll. And there are many on the Rabbi Sacks website. You can type in a word and learn different ideas. And yes, and to heal a fractured world is very worthwhile doing it. I myself have begun to write as well, my own ideas. And Rabbi Sacks encouraged his students to write their own ideas. So I'm talking about him and his ideas because he's not here to do it. But he would say, talk about your stuff, right? So in the next session, I'm doing that kind of stuff. I've got a book about questioning belief, about helping people understand why we do these things. So you can find out about it over here as well. But do yourself a favor, read some Rabbi Sacks, and have a good day and be responsible. Thank you very much.
As you're walking out the door, first of all, thank you so much to Rabbi Zarum for his wonderful session. As you're walking out the door, please take any trash that you brought in with you. There's actually not supposed to be any food or drink consumed in the auditorium. And for those of you who are on live stream, we'll see you back in 20 minutes at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time.